Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to do the one color fisherman's rib knit in the flat. If you're somebody who wanted to try brioche or has tried brioche but you just didn't like it because it felt a little too complicated or challenging, all of those bark and burp stitches, then fisherman's rib is going to be your friend. It's sort of the cousin to brioche, the friendly cousin of brioche is what I call it. It provides a fabric very much like brioche. It has the same kind of look. It's flat and it's reversible. It's very stretchy. It is a rib, so as you can see, it's pretty much a one knit, one purl type pattern. And it lays flat, it doesn't curl, and it's pretty warm, it's pretty thick. And so I think it just makes for a wonderful scarf, or you can even use this for a blanket or a shawl. Lots of projects. So the fisherman's rib can be knit in one color, can be knit in two colors, it can be knit in the flat, can be knit in the round. And I'm going to do a series of videos to show you this rib stitch in the different forms. But in this video, I'm only going to demonstrate how to do it in the flat. So if you wanted to try brioche and were not successful or just didn't like it, then I would say definitely give this one a try. It's very easy. In fact, I'm putting it as part of my simple stitch series. So give this one a try. In fact, I wanted to show you just a comparison, because here's my scarf, my brioche scarf that I knit up a while back, and I have a one color brioche knitting video on that, and you can see here's the brioche knit and here's the fisherman's rib, and of course the yarn is different. The brioche yarn is thicker, which is why it looks the pattern looks a little thick compared to the yarn that I've used here for this fisherman's rib scarf, but you can see that it's almost identical. So you sort of get the brioche look without the brioche complexity. And I've provided the details of the pattern. Now this here looks like a multicolor scarf because I used a variegated yarn. I used the Lion brand Mandala yarn, one skein of it, which is about 5.3 ounces or 150 grams. And the color, this color pattern or this color combination here is the unicorn, is the color type for this skein. And so this one skein gave me a scarf that's about 7.5 inches in width. And it really worked out well because it started off with just the stripe of white. I just started from the start of the skein, and it gave me a nice little stripe of white, and then sort of this light pink, and then it went into the darker pink, and then faded into sort of a lavender, and then a blue, then a bluish gray, and it actually ended up on a similar really light blue gray, and then a white at the end. So it worked out great because both my ends, if I get the cat hair out of there, you'll see both my ends end up in white. And I have a selvage stitch on either side, which gives a very nice little edging of just the rib stitch, or just the knit stitch, and I'll show you that in just a minute. So super simple stitch to knit up, really not too complicated. Now, if you do want to, I've provided the details of the pattern and the materials you're going to need for the scarf and the gauge, etc. in the description field below. So if you click on the little drop down arrow below the video, you'll get all the details. But if you decide that you want to make a wider scarf or a longer scarf, then you will need more than one skein. Or if you want to add some fringes or a fringe or some tassels at the end or something, then you might need more than one skein. But otherwise, one skein will give you a very nice scarf. So for the fisherman's rib knit in the flat with the one color, you do need an odd number of stitches. And now I've cast on about 13 stitches. I'm going to cast on a couple more. And this is, I'm using the long tail cast on here. I've provided a link to that video demonstration if you want a refresher for that. I prefer the long tail cast on for this because the fabric of the scarf is really stretchy, and so having a cast on that allows for that stretch makes it a little bit better, I think. So this is why I would prefer a long tail cast on or a German twisted cast on rather than just a knitted cast on. But if you want to use the knitted cast on, that's fine. I would recommend you just cast on your stitches a little bit loose. Now the pattern is pretty much a 2-row repeat, but it needs a setup row, and the setup row is really just knit. All stitches are knit. So I'm going to go ahead and knit all the stitches, but before I do that, let me verify I do have an odd number of stitches here. Yes, I do. Okay, So I'm just going to go ahead and knit all the stitches in this first setup row, and you're going to do this only one time. And this is just your regular knit. Now, because it is a rib stitch, sorry, I have a piece of cat hair here. Because this is a rib stitch, you are working it as a knit one, purl one, pretty much every row. However, the knit that you do is a little bit different than your standard knit. And really that's the only complexity in this fisherman's rib stitch. So the one color flat fisherman's rib is really very simple. Okay, we've done the first row all knit, and now we are ready to start row 1. Now both rows 1 and 2, your first stitch, you're always going to knit, and that's what is going to give you that nice little knit edge. Now if you choose to want to just slip this first stitch without doing anything, you could do that as well, but I think the knit one looks nicer for this pattern. So knit. Now starts the pattern. So you're just going to do a knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, but the knit one is a K1B, which means knit one below. And that means you're not going to knit in the stitch, but you're going to knit in the stitch below it. So you're looking for this little hole underneath that stitch. You're going to insert your needle and you're going to knit it, and then you're going to drop this stitch. And I know it's going to feel weird because you have not inserted into the stitch. It just feels weird to drop the stitch. You feel like you're going to lose the stitch, but you're not. Just drop it. Okay? Then bring the yarn forward and do a regular purl one. So this row, that's your repeat, a knit one below. So again, you're knitting into this hole below the stitch, okay? So find that hole, insert your needle, knit, and purl, regular purl. And we're just going to keep doing that all the way to the end. Knit, purl, knit. When I say knit, I mean knit one below, and purl, knit one below, purl, a couple more times, knit one below, purl, knit one below, and purl. And then you're going to turn your work. Now I am using double pointed needles for this demonstration, but that's just because they're short needles. You don't need double pointed needles for this pattern. All right, row 2. Again, first stitch is just a knit. And now start your pattern repeat. It's a purl one and a knit one below. So bring the yarn forward and do a purl, regular purl. Take the yarn back, and now we're going to knit one below. So again, not knitting in the stitch, but knitting in that hole below the stitch. And you'll notice on this row, you've got the V's, right? So you're knitting in the hole of that V right there. So insert your needle and knit. And that's your repeat. Just regular purl one and knit one below, okay? Regular purl one, knit one below. And just be sure that you're catching the right knit one below, that you're not inserting in some other hole. For instance, these other holes that you see on the side, that you're not inserting in those. You're actually finding the hole below that stitch and inserting it into that hole. All right. And so for this second row, you're going to keep doing this purl one, knit one below until the last 2 stitches. And when you get to the last 2 stitches, you're going to purl one, and then the last stitch you're just going to knit one. You're not going to do the knit one below. And that's what will give you the nice little edge on the other side as well. And that's it, rows 1 and 2. Now when you first do it, it is going to look a little wonky. It's not going to look as pretty for the first few rows, and you'll wonder what's going on. It'll make these little holes kind of pop out, and you'll think this isn't right, but believe me, it's right, because if you keep doing it, I promise you, your work will look like this. It will look very pretty. Now, if you're used to knitting just regular knit and purl, I have to warn you, there will be times where you will slip and you'll forget the fact that you're supposed to knit below the stitch, and you'll just slip back into your regular knit one, purl one. And if that happens, it will make your work look, I have one or two examples that I've done this in this scarf here, and I discovered it a little bit later, and I decided I'm not going to go back and rip out the stitches. This scarf is just for my use. I'm going to leave it. So let me see if I can find an example for you. Right here is an example where I did that, and I accidentally just did a regular knit rather than doing a knit one below, and it gives me that little bit of difference. So it doesn't look too bad, but if you want to make sure that you're not making these mistakes, or you want to proactively catch these mistakes, then I would highly recommend putting proactive lifelines for this project, because it is difficult to get the stitches out once you've made a mistake, just because of that complexity of knitting below the stitch. So after you've knit a few inches and you've done it perfectly, go ahead and put in a proactive lifeline. I've provided a link below for that video that I recently posted, and so highly recommend proactive lifelines for Fisherman's rib, especially if you want your work to look perfect. And after you're all done, you're going to bind off. You can just do a regular bind off, or I prefer to do a bind off in pattern, as in a bind off with a knit one, purl one. So to bind off, you're just going to knit the first stitch, then you're going to knit the second stitch, and you're going to bind it off or cast it off. Then you're going to purl the next stitch, and you're going to cast it off. So it's the same cast off, regular cast off technique, except you're knitting one, casting off, and then purling one and casting off. And again, by doing this, by casting off in this ribbing pattern, you're going to get an edge that's a little bit more flexible, a little bit more stretchy, and it'll allow for the stretch of your scarf itself. So I do hope you give this Fisherman's rib a try. I'm absolutely in love with this stitch, although I do like brioche just a little bit more, but this one is it's just an easier stitch to knit. And once you're used to it, in fact, after you've knit a project like this, I bet you if you go to a regular project, you'll tend to start knitting below the stitch, and you'll, maybe end up making mistakes there. But hopefully you can decompress a little bit between projects and kind of reset. But just give this one a try. If you have any questions, leave me comments. If you have ideas or suggestions for videos, if you like the video, please click the like button. And if you want to stay tuned to all my videos, please subscribe to my channel, Knittycat's Knits. As always, thanks for your support, thanks for watching, and happy knitting!